Hey, you're here with Paul from The Answer.
This is Cormac from The Answer, and you're listening to Linear Rock.
Fantastic. So welcome to Linear Rock, The Answer. Welcome back to Italy, actually. Last time you came here, you were performing with AC/DC, if I'm correct. And it was a very huge show. So you like our country? Which is your perception of it?
Yeah, we love coming to Italy, and we've been coming here now for almost 6 years, I believe, since we released our first album, Rise. And we've been reminiscing our first show in Milan. We played in front of 16 people, so we're hoping for a bigger turnout tonight. But yeah, you know, it's always fun when we come here, because the rock and roll audience, especially having played here with AC/DC, we've learned that the rock and roll audience is very passionate about their music, and you guys really seem to understand what it is to be into rock and roll, to be a rock and roll fan, and to appreciate, you know, rock and roll bands, and we feel very at home here.
And how cool was that experience for you? I mean, the Black Eyes tour with AC/DC. Which are the pros and cons of an experience like that for a band like The Answer?
I mean, it was pretty much a dream come true to a band we all grew up listening to. Very big fans, and you know, it was great just to get to see them finally, because we've never seen them, and then we got to see them 118 times, which was very good. We got to open up for them, and it brought us to a whole new audience, you know, all across the world, all across Europe, across America, Canada. So it was, we played to a lot of people, which was good for the band. I guess some of the cons of that were being away from home for so long, and living on a bus, which, you know, it's not so bad. And I guess it also, another bad thing was we didn't get to play for our fans enough on the last record cycle for Everyday Demons. So in a way it feels we're only coming back to play in Italy now and do these shows, and it's they've gone really well so far in Torino and Roma, so we're very happy to be back and doing that.
You can say you learned something new from that tour? I mean, sharing the stage with a band like that must have been, you know, incredible.
Yeah, I think we learned an awful lot. You know, watching those guys work a stage that size every night was a sight to behold. I think probably most importantly, we learned a few things about writing a good compact rock and roll song. You know, those guys are masters at that. You know, they don't overcomplicate things. They've got a good strong message, and they lay it down in a really strong way. And I think we drew on those experiences for our new record, Revival. You know, I think you can hear that kind of positive energy permeating throughout the album, and you know, a lot of that is influenced by our time with the AC/DC guys.
Okay, yes, that's, I mean, the new album Revival sounds, you know, a perfect match within guitar riffs and perfect melody, and has a lot of punch, is more bluesy. So do you think that the experience with AC/DC in a sense influenced a lot the direction of the new music from The Answer?
I think we were, to a certain degree, heading down that road anyway. But definitely we're improving as songwriters and becoming more direct in what we did that way. But and I think as well, you know, the producer Chris Smith was a good influence on us in terms of hooks and melodies and stuff, and making things a bit more you know, a bit more melodic that way. But yeah, of course, AC/DC, you watch them do Shook Me All Night Long, you know, all across the world, and people reacting to it, no matter what nationality or what walk of life they're from. They all reacted to songs like that, and that was something we took away from that experience.
Have you been working on the songs and recording the songs any different this time, or you have a standard process for it?
I think we have a general way of doing things, in that we take all the ideas that we've picked up on the road, and we take them into our rehearsal space in Northern Ireland, and then we try to piece them together and develop all those ideas into songs. This time around, I think we mixed it up a bit, in that, you know, kind of all four members of the band were coming into the practice room with different ideas. as opposed to maybe just, you know, Paul arriving with an idea for a song and everybody working on it. You know, Mickey was coming in with songs, James and myself were coming in with ideas, and there was a good kind of open field to the creative process.
Yeah.
But you know, I think we apply the same kind of songwriting principles to our songs across the 3 albums, and that we have a particular standard that we need to reach before we can call a song finished.
Okay.
And I think, you know, it's important to us that all 4 of us can get behind it, because we're going to be playing those songs for 2 years after we lay it down in the studio, you know, and I think for our own sanity we need to feel satisfied.
Yeah. And how would you compare this new album, Revival, to Everyday Demons and Rise, to the previous ones?
I guess it's the album we've always wanted to make, and we were in the right place to do it in terms of, you know, our musicianship and our songwriting skills. I think obviously Rise was a very optimistic album. It was about us looking to get out of Ireland and see a bit of the world. And it was also the culmination of probably 4 or 5 years of writing from when the band started to that album came out. Then with Everyday Demons, it was written in a much shorter time space.
Okay.
And of course we did have the experiences of being on the road for the first time to draw upon to write on that. And the recording of it was very much, everyone talked about how they loved the live energy of the band and how good we were at live shows, and we tried to capture that. So the recording was an exercise in you know, trying to get a song the whole way through from start to finish in one complete take.
Okay.
And we did do that a little bit anyway on all the records, but that one we really went after it to try and have everything. You know, maybe there's an edit, like one edit per song in the drums, or you know, you fix the guitar if it was out of tune, but it was done very live. And with Revival, we kind of, I guess we learned from both albums. If a song needed to be live, we did it live. If it needed you know, more production ideas, we did that. There's tracks like Destroy Me, which we experimented quite a great deal on, and you know, Cormac would play a little bit of Mellotron and stuff on it. You know, the intro's something that wouldn't have been on Everyday Demons, and I think there's a lot of tracks where we experimented and we were encouraged to do so. So it's I'd say it's indulgent without being self-indulgent.
All right, great. Your roots are deeply founded in the 70s, of course, and you've been one of the first bands taking this chance before it became a kind of new trend, you know, to go back to classic rock. Revival sounds like a statement itself, even from the title. That's what you believe, you know, rock and roll needs to be right now. I mean, a revival. You have to go back to go on.
I think so, yeah. You know, we're talking about a revival of rock and roll from the grassroots up. You know, we're talking about getting back to those principles of passion and raw emotion and good songs, and not hiding behind the production. You know, I think too often bands seem to kind of grasp this kind of influence of the 70s because it's trendy, but they don't really understand, you know, what it is to truly mean what you sing about and believe in what you play, and you know, that's what this album's about. It's about kind of taking those principles and trying very hard to put a contemporary slant on it, because I think that's the only way that rock and roll is going to survive for the next couple of decades, is if, you know, it's freshened up, but at the same time you can't forget where the soul of the music comes from.
Yeah. The 60s and the 70s were our times to live in, and the best classic rock actually comes from those decades. Do you think that the big interest in classic rock right now, again, has any connection with the hard times we are living in now, and the willing, you know, to cry out your anger and find the energy also in music to, you know, to live up to what is happening in the world?
I mean, there's no better inspiration for a song than a bit of angst and pain, you know. I think some of the best songs in the world have been written inspired by both ends of the spectrum. You know, that like unadulterated joy or unadulterated sadness and pain. You know, and I think we definitely, as a band, we draw on our environment around us, and it's obviously no secret that things aren't going that great across the whole world right now, you know, and I'd say absolutely you could probably find, you know, there's more and more songs coming into the public domain that are inspired by those kind of hard times, and as you say, you know, I mean, that's where blues music came from, wasn't it? It was
Yeah.
it was all about the suffering and kind of finding an avenue and a means of expression for that
Yeah.
kind of pain. So it's nothing new.
You recorded 3 studio albums and 1 live record and DVD in 10 years, which is not very 70s in a sense, because back then, you know, the bands even, you know, recorded like 3 albums in 1 year sometimes. So what has changed so much from your point of view compared to, you know, what was happening then to now?
I guess it's. I think back then the first thing I would notice is rock and roll was it was still a very new form of music. Maybe it just came in the 50s, so it was, you know, 15, 20 years old at the most, if that. And the songwriting forms and sort of instrumentation was all new and it was all fresh. So it was kind of like any idea was kind of worked, and people just went with the flow.
Yeah.
To the point that you could do, you know, Led Zeppelin could do something like rock and roll and it's just a 12-bar blues. You know, it sounds great. And just because the way they played it, it still sounded fresh. It offered it something different than what Muddy Waters or, you know, Robert Johnson would have done to it. But if you do that now, I think it's been done so much you can't get away with that. So you could do things like that and maybe write 4 or 5 really good core songs and then dress it up with stuff like that and it's an album. These days, because there's so many ideas have been done, I think every song has to stand on its own, and it takes a bit more time to do that and keep it fresh. Another thing would be the industry now. Everything's so tied up in it. You know, an album cycle and a touring cycle, it's quite lengthy, and you kind of have to stick to that. It's very hard to break out of that and do 2 albums in a year, or like even to do an album every year is tough. It seems everyone's stuck in the 2-year cycle. So, you know,
is that something that you suffer in a sense? I mean, your creativity would, you know, produce like maybe 1 record a year, if you were allowed to.
I guess so. Yeah, yeah. It would be nice to get out of that straitjacket of the media. And, you know, it takes so long to set a record up. You gotta spend maybe, once it's done, it's maybe 12 weeks, you know, before it comes out. So it's, yeah, if you're out of that, I guess we would have more output. Yeah.
And do you consider rival sounds more like rivals or partners, or like partners in crime in a sense? How would you?
Partners.
I think it's good that there's bands like those guys out doing what they're doing. I think it adds relevance to what we're trying to achieve. And you know, it's not just those guys. You get bands like St. Jude and even, you know, there's a couple of bands emerging from Northern Ireland right now that are kind of keeping it pure, and it's just good that there's bands like that doing what they do, because, you know, that's the only way we're going to move forward.
Okay, and concerning the collaboration with Lynn from St. Jude that you just mentioned, how that came about, and can you tell us more about them?
Yeah, Lynn, kind of originally the idea for a duet, kind of the seed was planted in El Paso whenever we were recording the album. We had a notion that we wanted to experiment a little bit and do a few things that we hadn't done before, and a duet was something we really fancied giving it a real try. And the song Nowhere Freeway kind of lends itself narratively, you know, through the lyrics to having a female vocalist on there, kind of singing, you know, having that kind of conversation within the music. and we had a few people in mind that we wanted to maybe try out, but just so happened the week after we got back from America, we went to see St Jude play in London, and Lynn got up and did her thing and was like, "This girl can sing." And we met her afterwards, and she was a nice girl, so we thought, let's give this a go next week, and we got her down to a studio in North London, and just, we had no real fixed agenda. We just see what happened, and a few takes later we knew that something was happening, and that's the way the duet for Nowhere Freeway came around.
She came up for a cover or for one of your songs?
We just went to see her band St Jude play, and we suggested she, we told her about the song Nowhere Freeway.
Oh, okay.
And it all came together nicely. I think it adds a really nice flavour in the album, and obviously it's our new single, so we're obviously very proud of the song itself.
It's a great song, actually.
Cheers.
How did you think your audience has changed in 10 years?
I guess there's more kids coming now.
Okay.
Then, obviously, when we played back home, before we had a record deal, it was kids we were playing to. So I guess for us, when we went to London the first time and toured the UK, it was maybe a bit of a surprise to us. There was older people coming to the shows who had maybe seen Led Zeppelin the first time around. So there was a lot of the sort of classic rock sort of magazine and Planet Rock kind of listeners, that kind of demographic would come. And I think as we've gone on and we've been in the media more, and with the AC/DC tour, the audience has definitely got a lot younger.
Yeah.
So that's probably the thing I noticed the most.
And do you prefer more intimate gigs like the one you're doing tonight in Milan at the Tunnel, or like arena gigs? Has it's great too. I mean, it's very rock, to do like a big audience. But what would you choose if you have to pick up?
I think we choose playing in front of our own audience.
Right.
Whether that's in a venue like we're playing tonight or the San Siro, I think we'd make it count either way. It's really important that when we're up there playing away, we're getting love from the audience, and it's a great feeling to look down and see people singing the words to your songs.
Yeah.
And obviously tying in with the revival theme of the album.
Yeah.
This tour is perfect because we're kind of reconnecting with the grassroots end of things, and we're able to look people in the eye, and I'm able to get down into the audience and have a bit of fun down there, and it's everything that rock and roll's about. In those smaller venues, it's nice and intimate and sweaty, and there's a lot of love with the audience. But you gotta be ambitious, and you gotta set your sights high. So, I mean, a couple of years down the line, if we're playing arenas, we're not going to complain about it either.
And which kind of T-shirts do the people that come to your show wear? I mean, it's just like classic rock T-shirts, or you noticed even, I don't know, maybe metal bands logos or something like that?
All sorts.
Yeah, all sorts.
All sorts of, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we get all of the people you'd imagine, the Led Zeppelins, AC/DCs, Thin Lizzies, but then I think it crosses over into the Metallicas and stuff like that too. So yeah, it's good. Old school metal fans as well.
Jimmy Page made a very strong statement about you. He said, if you want to experience what Led Zeppelin were all about in the 70s, go listen and see The Answer. Pretty flattering, I guess, for you guys. Did you know about that? I guess, yes, you did. And what do you think? I mean,
yeah,
it's a big responsibility as well.
It was unbelievable when Jimmy came out and said that, and we've been lucky to get nice kind of taps in the back from a few of our heroes in the past. Joe Elliott and Paul Rodgers and people like that have all come out and talked about the band in favourable terms. But it's we still keep our feet on the ground. We realise that we're going to move forward based on the people that come to see our shows. The people on the ground, as opposed to 4 or 5 rock gods telling you that you're a great band. You know, I mean, the most important thing is that people keep coming to our shows and keep buying our records. Of course, it's nice for guys that got to come out and say positive things, but you know, we kind of, we know where our main focus lies. You know.
The Answer also recorded some cover versions. Why this choice, since you are very creative yourself, and how did you choose them? I mean, there was a kind of fight within band members to pick up the songs. How did it work?
I guess Rock and Roll Outlaw was for our previous record label, Albert's. It was their anniversary party in Sydney, so we had to cover one song from their back catalogue, and one of our own, and it was, you know, AC/DC. We thought about doing that, but that was too obvious. So Rose Tattoo, Rock and Roll Outlaw came up, and it's I think it's a song that lends itself quite easily for us to do it justice and put a little bit of our own flavour into it as well. And when we did it in Sydney the first time, Angry Anderson was in the audience, so it was quite a test to see if we could pull it off, and we did. And he sort of, you know, congratulated us afterwards and said, you know, wasn't sure if anyone, you know, could do it justice, and it felt a bit funny with someone covering my song. But you guys did a great job, and I think you should record it. Yeah. So we went home and put it down on the tape.
So you played with AC/DC, as we already mentioned, and then you played with The Who, Rolling Stones, Paul Rodgers, Whitesnake, then you did Aerosmith in Hyde Park. I mean, how do you feel blessed about it, and was it like a sign of destiny, in a sense, considering your roots? How these things actually happen, are organized, and which of these gigs do you consider your highlight till now?
I suppose we can't really look further than playing 118 shows with AC/DC. You know, that was a massive chunk of our lives there. Yeah. It was an experience that we'll never forget. But you know, all those gigs that you've mentioned were memorable for all the right reasons, and that it's the band's first experience in playing in front of like enormous crowds. You know, we're not talking 400 or 500 people here. We're talking anything up to 80,000, you know. We played the Hockenheim Formula 1 ring in Germany in front of 95,000 people. That was just like a sea of people as far as the eye could see. And you know, you don't forget that kind of thing in a hurry, and it obviously helps the band with their stage performance and with their songwriting as well, because you get so much unbelievably positive inspiration to draw on there. So yeah, I mean, it was all great. I suppose the first enormous show that springs to my mind was playing with the Rolling Stones in Belgrade. Again, 80,000 people, in front of a lot of rockers who you could tell, you know, didn't get to see maybe as many enormous shows as you would if you lived in England, for example. Yeah. So they were up for it, you know, and they gave us a lot of love. And I remember we played a song called Be What You Want from our first record, and I was a little bit nervous, and it was the first time I really kind of had the guts to look up. And there was, you know, a sea of people all clapping and timing the music, and I thought, you know, we can do this. we can manage a crowd like this.
And do you have any good backstage story about the Rolling Stones?
We've got some good backstage stories about a lot of people, but probably shouldn't broadcast them here.
Okay.
In case there's kids watching.
All right. How do you guys like the Black Crowes? I mean, do you consider them like an influence or more? I mean, they've been around like 25 years now, so far enough, but and they're still rocking. So do you like them, and do you consider in a sense them as an influence as well, even if they're not maybe classic as all the other bands that we mentioned?
Definitely an influence, and a band we hold in very, very high regard. I think definitely for me, I grew up listening to a lot of sort of 80s stuff, you know, with Motley Crue and all that kind of thing. And I think the Black Crowes, when Shake Your Money Maker came along, it was the first record in a long time that didn't sound like the 80s. It sounded like, you know, the classic bands.
Yeah.
So they were kind of a contemporary band that had that classic sound. It was probably my first, you know, exposure to that. So they were a big influence that way. And as the early development of this band, when we started, they were kind of the only new band doing anything that we were into. It was, the rest of the stuff was all new metal and I know Britpop and like early garage rock stuff like the Strokes, which were not, you know, it's okay, but it's not really, wouldn't inspire me to start playing guitar or anything. And they definitely were still around doing that, so yeah, huge influence.
Did you ever think that you were born in the wrong decade, in a sense? I mean, did you ever think how it would have been for you being actually a band in the 70s?
I get told that I was born in the wrong decade every time I go into a bar in Belfast. But, you know, the mind wanders, and of course it would be a lot of fun being, you know, as Paul was talking about, rock and roll being so young at that stage and everything was new and exciting, you know, that would have been great to experience. But, you know, I think we're a band that's happy with our lot, you know, and I think, you know, the world needs bands like The Answer to, you know, remind people what kind of good, honest music is all about, you know. And,
yeah.
I mean,
so you're a band on a mission.
Absolutely on a mission. Absolutely. I mean, it's, you know, you look around the music scene today. There's very few real bands and musicians that you can hold on to. So, you know, it's important that we keep the flame alive.
And do you think that being from Ireland makes you unique in a sense?
I think it gives us an edge for sure. Yeah. I mean, our setup in Northern Ireland is obviously a unique one, you know, the culture and the politics and everything else that goes on there. And, you know, while we don't come out and write a concept album about the struggles of Northern Ireland, it still, on a kind of subtle level, permeates through our music and gives it an edge, similar to the way that, you know, Thin Lizzy's Irishness give Phil Lynott and those guys an edge, and Rory Gallagher was very obviously an Irish musician with an unbelievable talent for blues guitar music, you know. I think we're continuing that Irish and Northern Irish tradition of rock and roll and blues music.
And is it true that Mickey, your bass player, actually played the famous black bass pre-owned by Phil Lynott? Is that correct?
It is, yeah.
Okay. And that he was the one and only doing it, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Or the first one, actually, after, you know, Phil's death.
That's what we're told. It was, I think it had been up in Philomena's roof space since Phil passed away. And it had the same strings on it, so
wow.
there was still a bit of Phil there. It came about from, we played a benefit show to raise money for the statue in Dublin. And met Philomena there, had a few drinks and got on very well. And when they made a replica of the bass so it could be moulded for the statue, and it was sent to Belfast, and Philomena called up and said to Mickey, "Do you want to go down and be the first one to play the bass?" So he did, and yeah, we were all there to watch his great moment. It's in the Keep Believing video as well.
He still made a few mistakes, but right?
He did, yeah. Bless him.
Okay, and June 2008, you played the Isle of Wight Festival. What that experience meant actually to you? Was that special?
It was special. I remember when that festival started back up again, thinking that would be a great one to play. I think the previous year the Rolling Stones had headlined it, and it just seemed like a great event again. And this year the lineup's unbelievable. You know, you've got Tom Petty and it's Bruce Springsteen playing as well. Yeah. It's a great, very strong lineup. And even the whole experience of having to get a boat to play the festival. You know, we were on the ferry with all the punters and all the fans going to the festival, so they're all coming over with their programs and getting us to sign them, and we're having beers and having good fun with with the people on the ground, and yeah, I was still kind of getting used to playing in front of massive crowds like that as well. So it was a great learning curve for the band. But you know, obviously, you look back at you know, I've already mentioned Rory Gallagher. You look back at the footage of the Isle of Wight Festival, and there's guys like Rory and Free, and you know, all these great heroes of ours that have played that same festival. So it was a very enjoyable experience for sure.
So seems you have also a human connection with your fans. I mean, you don't act the rock star way. Is that correct? I mean, the fact that the story that you just told me is
only
it's an example.
Only whenever I'm really, really drunk, I get illusions of grandeur. No, I think again it probably goes back to our Northern Irish heritage, and that you got to keep your feet in the ground. You know,
Okay.
Can't walk around Belfast with your head higher than everybody else's, or you'll get a punch.
Okay. So 412 Days of Rock and Roll is your live DVD and CD. For those who didn't see you perform yet, do you think that this will actually get the same feeling and clear idea about The Answer as a band from, you know, watching it? Or it's better to come and see you play live on stage?
I think it's always better to come and see it in the full 3 dimensions, but it gives you a good indication of what we're about. I guess it's quite a different environment, being that it was from the AC/DC show, so it's, you know, you get to hear and see what the Answer would sound like in an arena.
Okay.
But it's a different experience again when we're playing to our own audience. It's a bit more exciting, a bit more intense.
Okay. With your knowledge of the industry, touring and all, you know, that you learned now, if you could give one piece of advice to young bands that are starting now, what would you say?
Make sure that you want it. You know, make sure you want to do it for the rest of your lives. Because if you're not 100% committed, then you fall off. You know, you just lose focus on it all. Okay. It all goes to pot. You know, you watch bands like AC/DC. Brian Johnson's up there singing and dancing like he's a 21-year-old kid. You know, still believes in what he does and still wants to be up there. And you know, you got to really give it everything you've got.
Future plans for now?
San Siro.
Okay. San Siro is the next step. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Just keep making good music, and hopefully more and more people will come to our shows and buy our records, and get back to Italy as soon as possible, of course.
Thanks, guys, for being at Linear Rock, and we hope to have you back soon to Italy. You rock.
Thank you very much.
And buy Revival from The Answer. That's a great album. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.